Yeah, I've started
Good
recording.
afternoon. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. We appreciate you taking time off your busy schedule and attending this webinar. And we understand that it's still Thursday. For some people, it's middle of the day. It's 1 o'clock in the Pacific and 4 o'clock in the Eastern time. So we really appreciate you guys joining. So today's webinar is on the security as a service from ERPA group, and these are automated access controls, and we will go through what these services are under this umbrella. My name is Jay Chitkara. I'm the PeopleSoft practice lead in the ERPA group. I bring about, I think, over 12 years of PeopleSoft experience, security experience within PeopleSoft area. And then outside of PeopleSoft security, I have 6+ years of security under experience under different enterprise type of applications.
Hey, this is Kiran Biravalli. I'm located in Dublin, Ohio. Actually, we have a very big thunderstorm moving in. So, Jay, if there are any disruptions in connectivity, you would have to take over. And I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at ERPA. And I've been in PeopleSoft world since version 5 of PeopleSoft. We try to shed some light along the way on some of the use cases and benefits of how to automate security and how any organization can benefit from certain simple methodology options and technology options along the way.
Thank you, Kiran. So the agenda of today's meeting, we're going to discuss what ERPA Group is about. We will share the common challenges PeopleSoft customers are facing in the security world. And then we will share the benefits of automated access controls. And we will also share about our intelligent two-factor authentication. I'm very excited about that. One thing I wanted to share about the automated access controls is anybody can do automation if they know how automation works, but security is a combined approach of art and science, and it's our methodology using the technology. You know, how to use technology is an art, and how to give that security and productivity combined approach. So we're going to share our unique approach to identify and handle security loopholes and mitigate risk. We'll share past performance and case studies and why ERPA Group.
So, a lot of you may know us by name ERP Analyst. ERP Analyst, we recently rebranded ourselves as ERPA to reflect our core values of empathy, responsibility, passion, and agility. And these are very near and dear to all of us at ERPA. So we thought, as we are growing, what best way to preserve these and institutionalize our values than to call ourselves after our values. So this is how we interact with our colleagues, our customers, and our suppliers and partners. So, just wanted to mention a brief about why it is so important to us, right? So, company was founded in '99. By inception, by design, PeopleSoft focused. So as we grew, as our customers grew into other areas, we got into the Oracle Cloud, business intelligence, and big data. Big data is a huge platform that we have actually built a lot of microservices on big data platform and are able to streamline and fast track data monetization. So probably that's a topic for some other day. The PeopleSoft hosting our many services. In a way, we take your PeopleSoft application and combine with our infrastructure and give you PeopleSoft flavor as almost like a cloud application. So you don't have to worry about the infra. You don't have to worry about application updates or bundles or tax updates or anything. All of those will be applied and systems are maintained by us. So that's another service that's been picking up a lot of traction, right? So 99% customer satisfaction rating. People ask us, how do we measure? we measure by repeat business. So when customers keep coming back to us for more projects and more work, that's how, and we grew through employees referring other employees, customers referring other customers. So we still maintain, the same culture of employee first, and that reflects in the retention rate of 95%. And the employee count is little dated there. We should update it to 600 plus. But Jay, next. So we also have a policy of no questions left behind. So please feel free to type away questions as and when they cross your mind. You don't have to hold them to the end, and we will address those questions verbally or in the chat window, or as a follow-up to this webinar, right? So the top places to work, best workplaces, and all of these are reflection of our core values and culture. And the Inc. 5000, it's been 8th consecutive year that we are on that listing. So those are reflection of our growth, and CMMI, ISO are reflection of our methodology. And we've been consistently maintaining platinum partner and advanced certified partner, and all those top tier certifications and partnerships with Oracle ever since. Right, next. So this would be the last about the company slide, and then we jump right into the content. So we broadly structure our practices in PeopleSoft, BI, the cloud applications, and big data. And in all of them, obviously in cloud applications, there is no hosting, but other than that, we do the implementations, we do the upgrades, and we do the hosting and managed services, remote lab support and remote lab application development and customizations, security service as a service, and testing automation as a service, and in addition to the regular consulting services and whatnot. So just wanted to capture a snapshot. And Jay?
Thank you, Kiran. So going back to the agenda, we covered about the ERPA group. The next thing on the agenda was the challenges for PeopleSoft customers today. So I'm going to go through some challenges which customers face. You have, because security is like, you can put too much security where the productivity will become compromised, or vice versa. We understand that institutions and organizations get repetitive access requirements during the employee turnover, and also sometimes it is even during the new modules. Sometimes it's repetitive access requirements, and it takes too long to assign security. There are no SLAs, so we understand that sometimes it takes 2 weeks, 3 weeks to get access to something. And if your organization is growing, then obviously you will have a rising ticket volume. As the world is changing, you have data is everywhere. So is audit and compliance needs are growing. Periodic audit needs are growing. Some institutions are being audited up to 5 times a year. You need to have the RAMP, which is the risk access monitoring plan, which is like identifying the top 10 risks which the institution may face, even from inside or either from outside. And then even if you clear all the audits and you keep on applying all the security fixes, how do I identify that how much of the access controls is enough? And security in today's interconnected world, which I was sharing before, is we have, obviously you may hear in the news that so-and-so data breach happened. There are rising data security threats are there. Now, world is changing. You have mobile, you have internet, and people are demanding self-service. So you have public-facing URLs, especially in today's self-service world, whether it is expenses, whether it is employee self-service, and that portfolio is expanding too. The employee self-service portfolio is expanding. The student self-service is expanding, and you have. So I wanted to share that. And then, are we confident that we have good security in place, or are we waiting for the data breach to happen to say that we did not have the good security in place? So how do I test my security, in other words, right? So that's the challenge. The other challenge is the data governance. The data governance, that who owns which data, because many of the data is integrated. So it's very difficult to define the data ownership in many places, and who's accountable at the end. You may have heard the term data custodians or information owners. So has every organization defined that? And then what's sensitive and what's not? The identification of sensitive data. Obviously, that's the need. And another need is the challenges, the encryption, the data masking. If you're coming from an institute, you will have the date of birth, the addresses, and if you are in the healthcare industry, you have the addresses, the patient addresses, even the names. Sometimes in many organizations, they don't want to publish it to the outside world because when the information is combined, so information isolated may be okay, but if two information combined can become a security or a privacy issue at that time. The other challenge is the constant education involved in the security world. Many places feel that it is the ISO's job or PeopleSoft security team's job to secure, but even those people feel that it's a shared responsibility. So there's always a need for constant education. Securing data when integrating with other systems. So, if I secure PeopleSoft and PeopleSoft is sending data to external applications, then how do I make sure that that data which is leaving the transactional system is secured, right? So to give an analogy is like, if I live in a house and my front door is locked, but if my back door is open to the patio and anybody can enter from the patio, so that's the thing I'm talking about when we are, have I closed all the security loopholes or the security gates, or do I have a gate control? Complexity is rising. You have systems which are demanding automation of data security, which is very complex to do because data keeps on changing. As the organization grows, the modules grow, you have interfaces with external vendors. Automating data security becomes a very complex thing, that how do we stay on top of it? And very little time to normalize. And if you understand the word normalization, it's basically, it's kind of going back to security should not be too tight, should not be too loose. So normalization is a technique where how much granular you want to be at, right? Or how much flexible you want to be at. I think I already shared about data is everywhere, systems are integrated. This is another piece, which is data analytics is needed to resolve security issues. One of the problems with PeopleSoft customer face is that the security analysts are missing in today's world. We have, because it's not, at least in the ERP packages world where, so sometimes developers are doing the security or functional data owners are doing the security, but the analytics-wise, security piece is missing that because the rising ticket volume is there. And then the two-factor authentication. Many organizations feel that we have put the two-factor authentication in place, whether it is on a direct deposit page or it's at the logon page, but is that enough? Are the data breaches still happening? And that will lead me to talk about our intelligent two-factor authentication, that it's not just two-factor authentication, but how artificial intelligent it is. So with that, I will share.
Jay, if we go back onto the previous, so a couple of situations are, if we talk about data encryption and data masking, data encryption is key in the production environments, and data scrambling or data masking is for non-production environments where people have elevated access. But is that in place, right? Or the integration that you were touching on. So a lot of times what happens is people, the software developers or PeopleSoft developers develop these integration points and get things into production. but those are attached to certain times generic permission list and generic security. So people who know how to get into these things can actually misuse certain integration points as well, right? And then coming to the two-factor, there were certain, I don't want to call names of the customers, but there were certain instances where their direct deposit data was compromised by routing the money to a prepaid Visa card. Once that money is gone, then it's not traceable anymore. Right? So there are, several actual day-to-day situations where the controls and mechanisms that we are going to discuss today will be handy from day one.
Right. Thank you. If I can wrap this up, I think to me the problem is you have a rising ticket volume. You have too little time because the personnel is limited. We lack the security analyst in many of the, and I'm generalizing it, that some institutions may have security analysts, but many of the institutions, many of the organizations, they don't. And then how do we find time to secure the data at the end of the day, which is needed? Okay. So with that comes in what ERP is security as a service. What are the benefits of it? How are we different? And so there are two slides on this one on the benefits. One is regarding the automation, and then the rest is the unique approach, which I was going to share later on. As I was sharing before in the challenges, there are repetitive access requirements. The users coming in, users leaving. Many organizations may have 1,200 employees, especially in the universities areas where you may have a lot of student workers, and that's a very common thing. When you go into the organization, the big organizations, there may be a retirees may be happening there. So how do I automate that access? We talked about the basic self-service access before. Can I automate that, right? Many organizations have attempted to do this, and they've been very successful with automating the basic self-service. But when you look under the hood, it's like 70–80% is automated, but not everything is automated. There are still some manual things that are happening, and those exceptions take a lot of time. So how do we find the trend and automate even those aspects, right? So the new user access with basic applicant or student self-service, and this applicant applies for talent acquisition also. The new user access with basic staff or faculty self-service. So those are very basic things, which are easy to do. So that's under this umbrella. What's not available in the market today, and what ERP Security as a Service offers, is the elevated access by job responsibilities. Can we find a trend and then automate that? So we have found ways to automate that access by job responsibilities, or even using the job code or even the position numbers, which translates to the job title, or even finding the data-driven data security. So you may have a data-driven that so-and-so employee is a manager to approve transactions for expenses, let's say. Then that's the data-driven data security. So can we automate access based on that? So similarly, there are so many rules you will find which you can use to automate that. So trying to identify those. What's missing from the market is, so you can automate some on the new user, we can automate some on the job code. What's left is more elevated access, because not everything can be automated by job code or position. As you know, that many people will have the same job code or same position number, but they have different access requirements. Why? It's because they probably have different skills, different competencies, seniority level, you name it, right? So that brings me to talk about the automated workflow. Using the workflow features, how do we approve the access within minutes rather than days, right? So we provide that feature. And then, so lifecycle wise, obviously the users are transferring from one job code to another job code. they are leaving the organizations. So you may have alumni access, you may have retiree type of an access, which a company like GE, for example, they keep their retiree access forever, so they have, so that's how, so many organizations have the need, especially for the W-2s. Many organizations say that we want to have even the retirees pull up the W-2 data so that it saves our HR people's time. Okay. So I talked about automation. Now let me talk about the threats using our intelligent, low-cost two-factor authentication model. And what's low cost I mean by is no external application interface needed, meaning I don't need to rely on external software to provide that. So that's why it brings the cost down. And it's intelligent because it detects threats. It detects threats, and based on the threats, and we will dive deeper into this particular topic later. Then using the same security data, can I see what my growth metrics are? How my applications are being used? PeopleSoft security is limited today. It only tells you about the login and the logout. That's it. It does not tell you where the user traversed to. Did they go to expenses page? Did they go to student center page? Did they go to from HR, did they go to finance? From finance back to, let's say, if there's a need, especially in student financial area, let's say in the university, where the bursar office may be going back and forth between finance and campus solutions. So our security reports are very analytical. They will tell you the usage of application, modules, page, by user, even by geolocation. So if somebody is trying to hack from remote location, we will be able to provide that, and we have set up alerts based on those geolocation. Okay. The last is the mitigate risk. These are automated alerts, which I was talking about. That if your account is being hacked or tried out from, let's say, Canada or Russia or Ukraine or anywhere, which you normally don't log on from, can I send an automated alert to the PeopleSoft security team that so-and-so user unauthorized access is being attempted, right? So that's there in our security as a service umbrella. Continuation to this is, I was talking about the combined approach of art and science. It should not be too tight, should not be too loose either. We have a way to identify and close all security loopholes. Okay. And this, to give you an example on this one, on the closing all security loopholes, is many times we will think that users and roles security is enough, but there are many pieces within the security umbrella which would be open. It could be open through a token, let's say. It could be open through a cookie. It could be open through the backend, or even through query manager. I mean, there are many ways to get into an enterprise application, and you see that Oracle publishing for PeopleSoft this patch or so-and-so patches needs to be applied for vulnerability attacks. So we try to identify, we try to stay ahead of the curve and close all the security loopholes. And if we cannot close all the security loopholes, if we cannot automate everything, then we implement a procedure that within 24 hours, within 8 hours, or immediately we will get an alert that so-and-so thing is happening, so that you have a procedure to handle that. I discussed about normalization design techniques. So what we offer is normalization design techniques, which will improve the performance and maintenance during the cleanup and the consolidation phases, or even when during the new modules are being implemented, especially during an upgrade. That during an upgrade, many things change at that time. Is my security in place at that time, right? So do I have normalization, or do I end up creating a new role all the time, The combined approach I was talking about. So what it does with the combined approach with automation is we reduce the redundancy and errors. We avoid the user frustration. We provide the access within minutes instead of days using our end-to-end automation, using our automated workflow, using our job code-based or job responsibility-based automation. And then the two-factor authentication is by IP address, by geolocation, by role-based, by page-based, and even data-based. So you may have a data which is like a credit card type of a data, right? And that needs to be secured. Can I put a two-factor authentication? And that's the intelligent thing I was talking about, that it will auto-detect that once you identify all the sensitive data under that data governance thing I talked about, then the two-factor authentication will be applied immediately by the system. So we don't have to create many rules every time, and it will detect that for you.
Yeah, and on that note, Jay, so for organizations where you have a lot of field employees who are mostly self-service or part-time employees or employees coming in and out, which is a scenario in commercial sector and retail, and which is kind of equates to students coming in and leaving the organization at a constant rate in universities. So in both cases, you don't want to bog everybody down by two-factor authentication every single time, but at the same time, depending on what they are trying to do, you may want to trigger a two-factor mid-session. Right.
Yeah. Another beautiful point I will share is that PeopleSoft has a idle timeout issue, where after 20 minutes of inactivity, it will time you out. And let's say you are a payroll director, or you are one of those users who have a lot of access, and two-factor authentication is coming in every time. And I was talking about security and productivity, a combined approach. But if you're logging from your company IP space or campus IP space, that why do I need to provide that two-factor authentication every time? If you're logging from the same machine you logged in 15 minutes ago, and security and PeopleSoft timed you out, do I need to force you to do two-factor authentication another time? Or can I keep it for like a week? That within a week we will ask you. If you are logging from Starbucks, let's say, well, that's the time we definitely want two-factor authentication, right? Because you're coming from a total different IP address. So by geolocation, by IP address, and that's why I was calling the intelligent two-factor authentication based on it is able to decide from using common sense that you are a user who logs on 99% of the time from your company IP space or organization IP space, and maybe once a week, and these are configurable things. If an organization says that once a day, then we can do it once a day. If the organization says once a week, then we can do once a week. These are all configurable items. Going next into automated. So security is one thing. Now let me talk about the audit and compliance controls. As I was sharing before, the rising needs for audit and compliance. We live in a society, unfortunately, that we build a signal after the accident has occurred, unfortunately, because either we are constrained by the budget or we don't have the time. So our security as a service will be able to detect problems, catch mistakes, and these are within 24 hours. You can make it within 15 minutes, 20 minutes, within 4 hours. This is all configurable. It will send you the automated alerts to the PeopleSoft security team, and those are the monitoring controls are automated using our technology tools, using our programs. Benefit will be you will have clean audits and your compliance requirements, whether they are SOX, if you are in a public space, like on a Wall Street, they have to provide that. If you are in a university space, then the FERPA is very common there. If you're holding, let's say, healthcare type of a data, you will have a clean HIPAA compliance requirements also on the audit side. And then audit trail of all types of access. So it's not just roles and security and the profiles. You may have sensitive data on social security, name, addresses, direct deposit. Two things can be combined. So we have the audit trails of all types of access when they're being modified. It can send an alert immediately. So it's a proactive approach rather than a reactive approach. Well, that's all great and good. that brings me to a next challenge, which I wanted to share is under the ongoing maintenance. One of the problem with automation is that people forget to monitor the automation. Okay, is the automation working as I had desired? Because the data will continue to change. And when you put in the automation, let's say a year ago, the data has evolved, and automation may be breaking at that time, or it's already broken, right? And it's too late by the time to recover all of that data. So there are ways to monitor the automation, which our security as a service provide that. The ongoing maintenance will be normalization. Periodic access reviews are very important, especially when your organization is growing. If organization is not growing, then periodically, definitely that needs to happen. Separation of duty needs to happen. Your ramp activities needs to happen. So that goes under ongoing maintenance. And what's unique about periodic access reviews is that people may think that we want to go over the update access or a person who can correct the historical data, but I'm talking about periodic access reviews. Even from a viewing point of view, read point of view, I understand that viewing is okay, but the security risk rises if somebody downloads that data in an Excel file and takes it outside the organization. That same view access can become a dangerous access at that time. So ultimately, if we define access by job duties, by job responsibilities, then everybody is accountable to secure the data, what they're seeing or updating. Last two bullet points is single sign and securing all integrations. So I was sharing before, data is integrated. You have PeopleSoft application. You have many applications are integrated with other third-party applications. So we want to secure those integrations also. And I'm not talking just integration broker, but I'm also talking from the back end. Many times there are DB links or so forth. Okay. And then the other thing is the integration with the identity access management. Okay. So with that, I will
so we will just go through some of the high-level segments of this automation. So right from user profile creation and the enhanced security. So we'll go through all various steps within a life cycle of how a user's access is maintained within PeopleSoft, right? So creating a user profile, let it be a self-service user, or let it be a student, or let it be a faculty member or a supervisor of payroll, or anybody, so they all have some basic ingredients, and most people probably have automated that part already. How do we create a user profile, right? But then depending on what job function they perform within an organization, they would need security access to perform their job effectively, but also limit access to the stuff that's not needed for them. Enhanced access is where we typically see chaos in terms of the design of the security layout and how well it is maintained, right? And then up to here, it's just accessing and navigating around in PeopleSoft, but then comes the actual data, access to the data security, right? So in finance, we have security on business units, and we have in HR, we have security on departments and reports to who can see what data. And typically this section is not well maintained. So in organizations with mature, robust HR and security functions in place, typically HR side performs little better than the finance side, and that's what we have noticed in our long journey of PeopleSoft things. And then comes termination, right? So again, a termination, certain aspects of termination are handled, such as inactivating a user, but a lot of other things that are pertaining to the user within the application and outside of the application are not properly handled. So when I say termination, it may not be termination from the company itself, or it could be transfer of responsibilities from one role to another role, right? So we should still treat that as termination of old job and initiation of new job, because you know that's a kind of scrutiny one needs to perform on security access, right? So what we were able to do is basically automate all of these functions, whether it is process related or whether it is data related or navigations or applications or user creation, user termination, or job profile change or employment change, somebody working two jobs within the same organization as a split role. So we've been able to handle and automate all of these functions within PeopleSoft Security.
Closing all security loopholes. Thank you.
Right. So, with any security, we have to have these monitoring activities or monitoring controls in place, right? And PeopleSoft comes with good security framework, but very poor monitoring framework. Meaning you can only monitor login, logout activity, but there is really nothing much beyond that, right? So in our automation, we are able to monitor high-profile access, meaning if somebody has a higher level access within the application, let it be procurement or let it be payables or anything, if somebody is accessing pay cycle manager, or if somebody is accessing benefits administration, or if somebody has access to open enrollment, so the system knows within the configuration, who to expect these activities from, or who is allowed to touch these components, right? So if someone else is navigating around in those areas, the system generates daily alerts. And same thing with the backend accounts, right? So the backend database functions, a lot of times end up unmonitored. So typically people may have database user account to expire once every few months, but nobody is truly proactively monitoring those database accounts, right? So this monitoring and control automation, we use that too, right? And access reviews. So this is where things get very interesting, because what navigations is somebody allowed to access, and what navigations are they typically accessing, and should a person have security to certain areas of the system or not? Because it doesn't matter how well we automate everything, it still depends on somebody making that initial request or performing that initial activity of transferring job, or promoting or demoting or terminating within job data, or some changes happening in Active Directory. So based on those, if there is no initiation of any activity, right? So at some point, unless we have periodic access reviews, we will never catch disconnects between what somebody is supposed to have and what somebody actually has in the system, right? And separation of duties is big. This is actually going back 12 years or so, where somebody had actually access to creating a supplier and running a pay cycle. They actually created a supplier by their own name and ran a pay cycle manager to issue a check in order of 70K. But that person forgot to reconcile the check within the market as reconciled in the system. So as we were going through some data audit reviews, those things were all popping up. So separation of duties, segregation of duties, that's something that is baked into the solution itself. So you can determine who is supposed to have configuration access, who is supposed to have data transaction access, and the system will alert us if somebody has, access that violates the principles of separation of duties. Right. So that's all is baked into the solution as well. So Jay.
All right. So far we discussed about the, just to do a small recap, is we discussed about closing all security loopholes. We discussed about monitoring controls. We also discussed identifying the trends and automating every function, and also monitoring the automation. We talked about that, but does it really work? We talked about that. So there is a case study, which was conducted on a for a large higher ed institute, which is about 5,000 plus employees, 800 student workers. You have 25,000 student onboarding on an annual basis, and alumni on an annual basis, also graduating that many people, 140 plus departments, 4 application pillars, which includes portal, that means HR, finance, and campus solutions. So student system is included in that. Up to 5 times audits on an annual basis, and public facing URLs. So if you remember that these are the things I was talking before, that a typical big organization goes through this, and then the operational security tickets will rise, so about 350 to 500 operational tickets, 4,000 plus security roles. So Kiran mentioned from PeopleSoft 5. So I also come from PeopleSoft 5, and back then there was no role. It used to be permission list, users and permission list. And when PeopleSoft 7, I think it was, when the internet came, there was a lot of navigation menus came through, because online brought self-service. Before that, it was all very limited menus at that time. But when internet came, it brought a lot of menus. And now with Fluid, it's bringing totally duplicate type of menus. So we were looking at 9.2, and we designed the security service on 9.2, and there is the service. It has same things for Fluid different, for mobile different, and from the classical navigation different. So just wanted to kind of share that these roles can multiply, because the access is needed immediately, and the security team gets into this pressure to assign the access, and they do what they can. So these roles multiply very fast, and then in the end, it's ambiguous access. They're doing the same thing. You may have 30, 45 roles, which are a little bit different from each other, but when the security administrator has to go in and assign the access, they end up creating a new role every time, because it's very hard to identify that unless there's a normalization in place. And then the other problem was the security by the job titles. So many organizations, they end up assigning security by the job titles instead of the job functions. So, and if it is by the job function, then you can apply the normalization techniques. You can assign it to other people. So this case study was done for a large higher ed institute, and the benefits are on the left side. What you see is the savings in terms of the time of all the things I talked about in the user access creation, security by the job code, data driven. I think these are the things I was talking about, the workflow based, or the termination thing, which Kiran was talking about, and in the daily alerts, I was talking about the separation of duties. So these are the percentage savings, which you see on the left side. After this, I want to share about our security. So we have expanded that portfolio on the security as a service. You will see the intelligent two-factor authentication, and we are adding more and more services to this. We have the analytical usage security reports. It's in auto detect. We have increased the number of alerts on what we were talking before, and we can't talk everything on this one, because the time is limited and we value your time. Not everything can be automated. We understand, especially during the design time, during the cleanup time, especially when you are, like Kiran was talking about, access reviews are so important. So obviously somebody needs to go in and make those changes. Not everything can be migrated. So you have to sometimes make manual changes within production. So especially like message catalogs or URLs as an example, right? The standardization. So roles can go out of your hand and it can become many roles, right? So
So, the end-to-end user automation, right? So the very first step is user profile creation. So this user profile creation is actually a very simple automation that we have done at almost all of our projects that we have done over the years, right? So this actually, the security of service is a big solution with enormous experience of repetitive tasks that we kept doing pretty much every one of our customer sites. And we were like, why can't we just take it to the market as a package service? So, it is not limited to the basic profiles like employees or formal employees or faculty or student or self-service users or anything. It can actually go far beyond, and it has a very robust source option or integration option. So, depending on how we define the system of record, if it is PeopleSoft job, then it can go by that, or if it is LDAP or Active Directory. So whichever is the system of record for user profile creation, or it needs to be a batch process, like in some cases where part-time employees are hired in a different system and they just need to have a access. So it can also be driven by CSV files or batch files. So pretty robust interface for user profile creation and automation there. And for two-factor authentication, again, we have touched on this quite a bit during the presentation in the earlier stages, but you don't have to purchase any other software. It comes pre-baked into our solution. So comes handy when you have thousands of users or thousands of self-service users or thousands of students and part-time workers type of scenario where you really cannot give them a key fob of every time, which is expensive. So this is already baked into the solution. The user through self-service can choose how they want to receive the alert, either as an SMS or an email. And you can control what functions you want to get. When I say get, it's like what functions you want to secure behind the second factor authentication, and you can, by rules, you can define by geography or when should you re-trigger the second factor and those things. Kind of rushing because of the time, but Jai?
So we can show a demo. I know we will ask the questions in the end. If needed, we can actually even show a demo of all of these features if needed. So going forward further we talked about the enhanced access. In the enhanced access, we talked about the job code or the position number or the data-driven security. And we also talked about automated workflow. We talked about the functional data security, which Kiran was talking about, HR, finance, and campus. Everybody's aware of departments and time and labor. Finance has Fed ID, business units, cost centers, user preferences. So we have automated every type of function, whether on the finance side, it's a repetitive function on the user preferences as people are coming in and out. Same thing on the cost centers, business units, campus solutions, same thing. You have the demographic needs, the financial aid need, student financial, student records, admissions, and even combined. So you could have a combined functional data security needs. Even those are automated in the security umbrella.
Okay. Right.
Okay.
So
go ahead.
Yes, for terminations, it's actually goes hand in hand with user profile creation. Whatever is the system of record for user profile creation, typically is a system of record for user access termination as well. But that does not truly capture transfers, right? So our solution has already baked the job function changes, like if they are promoted or their department changes, or there are certain set of rules that trigger the transfer related automation kicks in, right? But it works hand in glove with the LDAP systems and PeopleSoft job data and all the other integrations, including third-party APIs and whatnot.
Right. Yeah, I'm going to skip the next slide just to so that we have time on the on the questions. So we already talked about the daily alerts, the detecting the threats. So this was just a repetition of showing that, taking a deep dive into those. And there's a cleanup required on the access reviews and SOD. Kiran?
Right. So,
next.
So before, I have just a couple of poll questions that I wanted to launch, and then if you guys have any questions, please type them away in the chat window, and I'll share the findings of the poll results. This basically, shed some light on where we stand, and because we have slightly different approach for PeopleSoft 9.1 or Campus Solutions 9.0. So let's not take too much time. I will close the poll in just 10 more seconds. So okay, looks like we have about 50-50 split between the Campus 9.2 and Campus 9.0, and I'm actually surprised to see so many on FSCM HCM 9.1. I would assume most people would have been in 9.2, but looks like there are a whole bunch in that group, almost close to 60%, and the other 40% is split across the 9.2 releases. And just another quick yes/no question. So this one shouldn't take too long. Oh, Jay, there are questions in the questions tab. Do you want to take the questions? Let me close the poll. And it's pretty much 100%. The answer is yes, close to 100, I should say. And this one, we wanted to actually understand, a lot of companies try and do security cleanup as a rush activity within an upgrade project plan, because they are actually looking at it as, I can squeeze security cleanup within an upgrade and get away with one round of testing. But there are certain considerations that need to be taken especially when you are planning security cleanup within an upgrade project. And actually 67% say it's handled as a separate project in their organization. So that's nice. And one last question.
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
One last question. This is about the audit requirements, right? Because in public sector, there are certain types of audits, and in higher education, it's a completely different set of audits, and in healthcare, it's another totally different set of audits, right? So, and in some cases, people just, they just never focused on audit of security unless, some kind of data breach happens. So, and thanks for the responses. I see it's, some plan in place in about 60% of cases, and 20% need to revise, and 20% need to be developed, right? So, okay, Jay.
So, yes, so there are two questions. One of them is very easy. I will take that one first. The question is, have you found an organization that does not need security cleanup? Okay. The quick answer is no. And the reason is PeopleSoft has been in the industry for maybe 20, 25 years now, and organization has evolved. Even the new institutions, they are converting from legacy systems, and it often requires in the market, because of the security analyst missing and the lack of the experience missing on art and science combined, of the analytical approach designing security, it's always a challenge. So that's the quick response I'll give. The other question is, how does automation determines mistakes and incomplete access work? So the quick answer to that is the alerts, the automation alerts. As I was sharing before, that if we, the example which we were giving before, that if you access from home and from your campus IP space, then obviously when you will be logging from Starbucks, let's say, the system has already captured that these are the 2 IP addresses you're logging from. And suddenly you log on from a 3rd IP address, our intelligent automated, the two-factor authentication is going to kick in and ask you for that two-factor authentication. It will also ask you if we want to remember that particular location or even that browser session or something. The other way, you asked about the incomplete access work. Many times, so Kiran was mentioning one thing about the when the termination transfer. When those things happen, termination transfer, people either just lock the user, do not remove the roles. Many organization institutes I've seen, they still have demo accounts in production, or they're using the shared account. And I was talking about accountability before. They don't have individual accounts for individual DBAs or PeopleSoft administrators, or even PeopleSoft security personnel. So when a person leaves the organization, you have a lot of access work which needs to be completed. Not everything can be automated, but what can be automated is, have we terminated the user's access throughout? Not because that person can be hired 3 months later. And incomplete access work, meaning you could have a database account from the backend. You could have an open account in the VPN layer. You could have an open account in the network layer. So we go beyond PeopleSoft. We check same account, because many of the systems, many of the organizations have PeopleSoft as a source of record. So we have the employee ID, we have those things. Okay, so let's go to the next one. I think that answers everything. We still have 3 minutes left, so we're doing good on time.
Yes. Yeah, so this actually answers the third question that popped up. How does our service work? It has 2 components to it. There is the implementation and cleanup component. That's where a lot of rationalizing and normalizing the security comes into place, and determining the data owners and the delegations and approval authorities, and there is a lot of fun stuff that goes in implementing this automation, right? So there is a cost associated with that implementation, and then it's a monthly subscription fee thereafter. So that monthly subscription will cover any of your future maintenance, or ensuring all of the data is security is being monitored and tuned, and the two-factor authentications. And so basically the entire application, the entire automation will be yours for that monthly fee, right? So and if you guys are interested in taking up a demo of the system, please feel free to type a question here, or you can reply back to the webinar invitation email, and we will follow up with you and schedule a deep dive session. All right. So with that,
great. So it's actually it's actually 3:59. We can finish this webinar a minute early. We really thank your time, and I'm sure many of you may have questions or did not get a chance to ask questions. So please feel free to email us, and we will be happy to provide a demo and take a deep dive into some of the things which, like many of you had questions on a particular topic. We can actually take a deep dive into that. So this was just a very generic thing.
And for those who are in the path of total solar eclipse, please do enjoy it, and have a safe means of enjoying it. Thank you.
Thank you again for joining.